Hello and welcome to another coding session with Mr. Jacob. This is the beginning of our tmux series where I show you how to configure and use tmux in a productive and development-oriented way, as I am doing every day when working in my profession as well as when I'm recording the videos. What is tmux? Tmux is actually a terminal multiplexer, which means it allows you to switch between different windows, to switch between different panes, to split them vertical and horizontally, to suspend sessions and get them back later while running all the processes in the background, to essentially do what a lot of terminal emulators have built in, like tabs, like multiple windows, like all of that stuff, but concise in one piece of software that you can actually run over SSH on a different terminal or just have all over the place the same configuration. And we are going to start a configuration from scratch once I have actually shown you the basics of this terminal multiplexer and how it works. So let's get right into it. First of all, we need to, of course, install tmux. So I am on a Mac here, so I will do that using Homebrew. So I'm using Homebrew and telling it, okay, please install tmux. And as you can see, of course, it is already installed. The version 3.5a is installed. If you are on a Linux system, just get into the tmux wiki on GitHub and check out the how to install link here, which shows you that you can install it via the package manager of your choice in your distribution usually. Should you not be able to use any of those package managers, there is a description on how to build it from source and then install it into your system as well. Okay, so once you have installed it, you can actually simply run it in any of your terminals by running tmux, and that's essentially what we are going to do here. At first, you will see that you have a really simple and normal terminal here. I have a terminal here, I can issue commands. Hello and welcome. So I can just interact with my shell in any way that I could before. The only difference is that we now have down here on the bottom a status bar, which shows something over here that we will talk about in a second. And on the right side, we actually have the current host that we are on. We have the current time and the current date. And no worries, we will theme and style that bar in the next episode of this series where we are doing theming of tmux while we are configuring all the basics now in this session. Nevertheless, what we have here on the left side is actually what makes tmux the thing that it is actually. It tells us that we are in session number 0. tmux will automatically number all sessions and windows and panes. We will talk about those concepts in a second. Starting at 0 by default. So we have a session 0, so it implies that we can have multiple sessions. We will see that as well. And we are in window 0. So what is to the right here of this 0 in the square brackets is actually the window specification. So we are in the window 0, which means that is running ZSH currently. There is no other application running. So if I would, for example, open up Neovim, you could see that it actually shows now that there is the application Neovim running in Windows 0. Okay, so that is actually what we see in the status bar here. And we can now, first of all, use our shell normal, but we can interact with tmux, of course, as well. And we do this by pressing the so-called prefix key. So the default prefix key is always to be pressed if we want to interact with tmux in any way and control tmux instead of just sending the key codes to our shell or to our application currently running in said shell. So the prefix key by default is Ctrl-B. So if I now press set Ctrl-B and, for example, the colon afterwards, you can see that I'm now in command mode of tmux. So that is actually a mode where I can enter all kinds of commands, just like with Neovim's command mode, for example, to actually do something within tmux. All of those commands are very well documented in the Manpage of tmux that we will take a look at in a second. But one of the commands that I could issue, for example, would be new window. And as you can see now, it simply opened up a new window here. So these things are called window. And we now have two. We have the window 0 and we have the window 1. And we can actually switch between those those windows by simply using the prefix key, Control-B, and then the number of the window. So if I do Control-B and 0, I will be in window 0. If I do Control-B and 1, I will be in window 1. And I can so quite easily switch between the different windows that I have here. By the way, we do not need to enter command mode and type new window because there is a default mapping in tmux which allows us to create new windows by pressing Control-B, C. So the C key after pressing the prefix key will create a new window. And as you can see now, I have 3 of those. I can simply close them, for example, by usually just ending the shell in there. So I just now type exit or press Control-D in the shell, it will be gone and the window will automatically be cleaned up. I can do something else here. I talked about, for example, the Manpages. So let's quickly switch to window 1. And for example, open up the tmux Manpages here. And as you can see, they are quite long and quite full of information. So nearly everything is in there. And when we start configuring tmux to our liking in a second, we will often refer to that Manpage as well, because we can look up easily commands and all that kind of stuff. But we cannot only have windows and sessions. We will talk about that in a second as well. We can have panes. So there is kind of a hierarchy. We have sessions, we have windows, and windows can have panes. And panes allow us to, for example, split the window horizontally or vertically. So we can actually do that either using a command. So if I do the prefix key here and the colon here and now in the corresponding command mode here, I can just type split window. Come on. And press enter and you can see that it will actually split the window vertically. And if I am actually or is that horizontally? No, that's a vertical split, isn't it? Yeah, that's vertical because yeah. Okay. Wait a second. I'm not sure. So it's a vertical split because the panes are now arranged in a vertical manner. So we have a divider, which is a horizontal line, but we have windows in a vertical manner, one at the bottom and one at the top. And now we can navigate between them using our prefix key and, for example, cursor up or prefix key cursor down, and therefore jump between those different panes here. And as you can see, I can scroll around in one of those and then go down here and say echo, please like and subscribe. So as you can see, that is working quite well here. No problems. I can navigate between them. I can further use the command for splitting windows, which would be the prefix key and, for example, the %, which will do in turn a horizontal split. So split the order of the panes horizontally. And the same I could do. There is a keybind here for keybinding a vertical split, which actually is the quotation mark. So if I press the prefix key plus the quotation mark, it will split up horizontally. And you can, of course, change the size of those panes and their arrangement and everything like that, just as you would like to. But nevertheless, let's now close them up again to have a little bit more space here, because that's mostly what we have in tmux. What I wanted to show you actually is if I do Command B and I split this one again, and I now change the window with Command B and 0, for example, back to our first window, you can see there is no split. So there definitely is a hierarchy. You have windows, and those windows can have specific panes. That's what the terminology in tmux is. So if I now go back to window 1, we actually have 2 panes in that one. So let's see what's all about those sessions. Those sessions are actually a way to have multiple sets of windows, which in turn can, of course, have multiple sets of panes. So what I could do is I could go back into command mode here and type new session instead of new window. And what it will do, it will create, you can see now here we have now session 1 here. It will create a whole new session, so a whole new set of windows. And you could even now detach from every session. Let's take a look at how this would look. We will just issue the prefix key, Command B, and then we will do D for detached, and it will now tell us, hey, I'm detached from session 1. So we have now kind of left tmux, but everything that is within a session is still running. So if I do now tmux attach, I will just attach to the last session that I was in. I can specify in the command line which session I want to attach to. no problem. But let's see. If I, for example, do something while true, do echo hello, I am running. And then I will do a sleep. And we have missed the do here. So while true, do hello, I am running, sleep. I don't know, 0.2, maybe 200 milliseconds, done. So as you can see now, it's printing and printing, hello, I'm running. So now I am actually detaching from this session, and I'm talking for a couple of seconds here to just show you if I'm now going back into that session and I stop that, I can actually see here that it ran in the background. So it was still running all the time while we were out of the session in the background. So you can actually start processes there. You could have an editor open or any long-running process like a build process or anything. You can actually leave the session and come back to it later. You can switch between sessions the same way as you can switch between windows. You are doing a prefix key and then just S. And you can see now we have two different sessions here. One of those is the one that we are currently attached to, and the other one is the one that we had before that one. So we just simply could go back, for example, to our initial session here, which is the session 0. You can rename sessions by doing prefix key $sign by default. And I could, for example, call this one YouTube. And now you would see that this session is actually named YouTube, which will come up in this list, of course, as well. So you could, for example, quickly create a session if you need to jump projects quickly to something else, or jump the focus of your work somewhere else because you are working on something and then you get, for example, a bug report in which needs higher priority fixing. So you can actually just shift your work into another session quickly, fix that bug, and then come back to exactly the state that you were in when you actually were working on another project or software procedure there that you were doing. That's mostly how I use that one. Okay, so how can we terminate a session? That's either we can end it via a command, or we can simply, for example, go out of it. Then tmux will, of course, go out of that because we have just terminated the current session. But then if we attach again, we could go into that as well. There are multiple ways to terminate sessions, but this is one of them. Okay, so this was a quick overview over what the main tmux features are and what you can do with them. The next thing, however, is that the basic tmux configuration is not very practical, at least for me. So I tend to actually change the basic configuration. And I have a couple of things that make working with tmux a lot easier for myself. And I want to introduce to you how you can actually have the same configuration set up there, which makes tmux a lot easier and nicer to use. So let's see. We are opening up a new configuration file here, just opening up tmux.conf, which is actually in your home directory, and it will automatically be sourced by tmux. So then let's take a look at this tmux.conf, and let's talk about the first thing that I want to change, which is the prefix key actually. So as I've said, the default prefix key is Control-B, and we have seen that I can use it here over and over again to issue specific tmux commands, and it works well. However, it's kind of a hassle for me to press Control-B, which is why I was kind of not that fast pressing those key combinations here, because I always have to think about that, because my muscle memory dictates me to press Control-A actually. Because I have remapped my Control key to the caps lock key. So Control and A are just besides each other, and that makes it very fast and easy for me to just press Control-A if I want to do something with tmux. So we can actually redefine the prefix key by setting the prefix option. And in order to do that, we need one command of tmux that we know. So what we know here is set option is the thing that we want to see. So let me scroll down here until we have the real function here, which simply tells us there is a set option command in tmux, and it can have a lot of different arguments here, or command line switches, so to speak, which are all explained down below here. It can have an option that we want to set and a value, and we want to actually set the option prefix. And if I now search further for prefix, we will see that there actually is such option. They are all listed there, and it's telling us that let me scroll this down a little so that you can read it and it's not behind my portrait there, that it sets the key accepted as a prefix key in addition to the standard keys described under key bindings and so on and so on. Prefix can be set to the special key none to set no prefix. Okay, fine. So we can simply set a specific key to be another prefix in addition to the original one. So let's quickly do that, I would say. So let's go back into our 0th window here, which is our configuration. The Neovim is still running there. And let's now simply set the prefix. So we do set option. And we are using the -G key to set that globally within all sessions. We set the prefix key here, or the prefix option, and we set it to Control-A. Okay, so far so good. So if I now save that file actually here and I would restart tmux, it would actually source it and everything would be fine. However, I don't want to restart tmux over and over again. So what I can do is I can go into tmux command mode here and tell it to source simply directly this file. So .tmux.conf here, and now it has loaded this configuration. And now I can actually press Control-A to switch to another pane, for example. So Control-A1 and I switch, or Control-A and 0 and not 2 here as I tried first. So now I can simply use another prefix. However, we still had this Control-B thing there, and there was a specificity set that if I wanted to actually send the real Control-B key to the terminal, it is defined that there is a key binding for Control-B. So I could have pressed Control-B, and it would have sent the real Control-B sequence to the underlying application or terminal. We have, of course, to unbind that as well now, so to clean up a little bit. That's why we are using the unbind command. There are unbind key and bind key commands actually, and unbind and bind are aliases for that, which we can use to create our own tmux key bindings. And we are simply unbinding the old one now, so that we have cleaned up a little. However, what if we wanted to actually send a Control-A into the application or into the shell that we are working with? That could be a slight problem here, because let's assume for 1 second this is not a tmux configuration but something else, and we want something like foo, and foo is 23, for example. And now we want to actually add to this or increment this number. Then Neovim actually has a nice feature allowing us to just go in command mode, in normal mode to this position and just press Control-A, and it would actually increment this number. But if I now press Control-A, I can press it until my finger falls away or rots away, because nothing happens, because Control-A is always a prefix key for tmux. So what I want to do actually is, here I want to set another key, or I want to create another key binding with bind or bind key. You can decide which one you want, because they are aliases, as I've mentioned, of each other. And I want to define that CA actually executes the command send prefix. And let's quickly save that and take a look at what send prefix actually does as a command. So that's here. So send prefix actually sends the prefix key to a window as if it was pressed. So that's exactly what we want. The moment we press Control-A, we want to send the prefix key. However, now you could say, wait a second, if we are doing that, we can't use Control-A as a prefix anymore, because it will always send this to the underlying window. You have to realize that a key binding always only happens after the prefix key has been pressed, which actually in turn means that if we defined a Control-A key binding, it means that we first have to press the prefix key, which in our case is Control-A, and then after that the key that we bound there is only accepted. So we have to press Control-A, Control-A to actually issue a real Control-A key sequence to the underlying application or terminal. So if I now source this file here and now do CTRL-A here, nothing happens. But if I press it again, it will increment. So for each double press of CTRL-A, you can see that the command sequence or the key sequence is actually sent to Neovim or to any underlying application there. And by the way, we really have set a variable here in this configuration file using this syntax. So that was the reason why I could source it actually, even though I had this value here. So we can actually use and create variables in this tmux configuration as well. And when we get to styling, actually, we will make heavy use of those. But let's for now just delete that again. So we have now changed our prefix key, and this is usually the way if you want to redefine your prefix key, you are doing it exactly that. You're changing that to the key combination that you want. You are then unbinding the original default configuration and key here, and then you are binding the send prefix to the prefix key combination that you set there. So those 3 lines are usually used to update and change your prefix key, and you can change it essentially to any key combination that you want. The next thing that I find quite irritating and not very good in the default tmux configuration is that it always starts with a numbering of windows and sessions and panes and everything by 0 and not by 1. And as a developer, I accept the irony in that, because I usually want arrays to be 0 indexed, because it makes a lot more sense in pointer arithmetic and everything else. But in tmux, it does not, at least not as I am using it. I am using the direct addressing, like I want to change to window 1 and window 2 and so on by pressing the prefix key plus the number key corresponding to the window, for example. And so it doesn't make real sense that it starts at 0, because the first window then will always be as the most distance away that it could have on my keyboard from the next one. So the 0 is on one side and the 1 is on the other side, and this just doesn't make sense. And that's why I'm struggling with only changing between our 2 windows here all the time, because I have to think where the hell the 0 is on the keyboard there, because the window in my mind is on the left to it, but the key is on the right to it. That just doesn't make sense. Luckily for us, we can actually change that behavior by doing a set option -G and changing the base index. So the base index actually controls where tmux starts its numbering of things. So numbering sessions, numbering windows, and so on. So I simply change that to 1. So now it will start its numbering at 1. And panes actually have a number as well, and they use a different property for that, or a different option, so to speak, in tmux speak, which actually is the pane base index. So just to be consistent here, we are setting that one as well. So now if I source that, actually you will see that nothing happens. So the numbers didn't change because those windows already existed. So for all already existing windows, this does not change anything. However, we can, of course, trigger in tmux to renumber all existing windows, which actually is quite a neat feature I want to show to you. So if I switch back to my Manpage here and I just check out the command move window, which we can actually use to move windows around and so on and so forth, actually has a parameter here. So let me quickly scroll that down so that you can fully read it. Has a parameter here, which is actually -R. And this -R parameter tells it that all windows in the session are renumbered in sequential order. So you could not only move windows around with that within its index, you can actually have it reorder everything according to its base, to the tmux's base index. So let's go back to Windows 0 for the last time now, because now we are renumbering. And we simply go into command mode here and type move window, and we give it the R option, as we have just learned in the Manpage, and press enter. And now you can see we now have properly a window 1 and a window 2. And I can now easily switch, or a lot faster and a lot quicker between them, by just using one hand and just switching between those windows. And usually I do not have more than like maybe 4 or 5 windows at the most. And so it's very easy for me to just switch between them only using my left hand with a quick set of keystrokes. That's very nice. So that's why I'm actually changing the base index to 1 usually. Nevertheless, now we have learned about this move window command. What is it if we actually have a couple more windows here? Let's say we have 5 windows here. And now for some reason I decide to clean up and, for example, remove window 3 and maybe window 4 from this list. So now I have the windows 1, 2 and 5. And now I decide, okay, that might make sense because I have remembered and I have in my muscle memory that, for example, window 5 is always a running debugging process or something like that, or a tail to a lock or whatever. And so I will always switch there. Everything is fine. Nevertheless, now I'm finished. I'm cleaning up my shells a little bit. Maybe I'm doing something else in the same project. I don't need all those intermediary shells anymore. Those windows there. So I've cleaned up that and I want to kind of reorder my windows. Of course, I could now go into command mode and type move window -R. However, for myself, I have discovered that I actually do that quite a lot after cleaning up some windows and moving them around. I want to simply reorder them. So I have a key binding for that. I have simply created in my option here or in my configuration a key binding that I actually bind to the SZ key, which is a very strange character that is mostly on German keyboards and not used by many other languages in the world. However, it is just right to the 0. So right to the 0 on the same key that has the question mark. If you press it with a shift key, there is this SZ. And I do not use this in tmux prefix mode with anything else. So I can easily use it. It is kind of in the vicinity of the keys that I use to change windows. So it makes perfect sense for me to use that. You can use any other key that you want, which is free to you that you might want to use for that. So I'm binding this SZ key simply with the command that we just learned, move window -R. And if I now actually source my, my configuration here again, and you can see I still have the windows 1, 2 and 5, and I now press the prefix key followed by the SZ key. Now I have magically windows 1, 2 and 3. Perfect. So now we have done that. So we have already handled a lot of basics that are not that nice in tmux that are now a lot better already. Another thing that actually tmux can do by now is using mouse interaction mode. So actually inside a shell, inside a terminal, actually there exist specific escape codes that allow running processes to actually read out mouse interaction like clicks and stuff like that. By the way, if you would be interested to take a look at how this technically works in a coding way, like we could do a Rust session on that or maybe even implement that in our pixel loop engine, then just drop me a comment and I will see if I do a session on that to explain that to you. Nevertheless, let's get back to tmux. There can be mouse support. So tmux can actually understand mouse clicks within the terminal, which could be nice to switch windows or to switch between panes or something like that. However, we need to definitely enable that. First of all, let's check if it is enabled by default or not, because that is actually something that might come in handy if you are looking at a specific option and you don't know if it's on by default, if it's on in the current session, and so on. There is the counterpart of set option, which is not get option, but it is show options. The plural is important here. So, if we actually issue a show options and we want global options, and then we could either press enter now, we see all global options, or we can specify a filter, in this case mouse, so it would tell us that the option mouse is off. Okay, so how would we actually know that we are searching for the option mouse? And it's an easy thing to do actually. We are going here into the Manpage and we search for mouse, and then we will see that there is this option called mouse, and this option can actually be either on or off, and it captures the mouse and allows mouse events or not. Actually, I have discovered that I rarely use the mouse with tmux, but it is kind of handy in certain situations, so I'm enabling mouse support usually. Because I haven't really seen a downside yet. If you actually know of one, please tell me, but in my usual work I have not encountered one yet, so why not enable that? So what we are doing here is we are setting the option globally mouse and we are setting it to on. And if I now resource the configuration here, nothing really changed. But what changed is now I can actually click the windows down in our status bar here to actually change between them. Which is kind of nice. I rarely do that. Where I actually use it sometimes is to quickly change panes if my mouse is already in the vicinity of that. So if I quickly split this thing up here, I can now change the panes by simply clicking into them. So now I'm in the top one, now I'm in the bottom one, and so on. The other thing that is quite nice is I can now grab those dividers here and simply move them with my mouse to actually change the size of the panes, which sometimes is a little bit easier than with keys if you have your hand on the mouse anyways at that point. So we have now mouse support, which is quite a nice thing as well. The next thing that I want to talk about is some so-called copy mode, I think, and its relation to history buffers and stuff like that. So actually tmux has its own scrollback buffer. So let's see what I mean by that. We could, for example, just do something while true, do echo random. Come on, random, done. And now it should spit out a lot of different numbers. Okay, it has spit out a lot of different numbers into our shell. And now I think we might want to scroll up. Actually, we could now, as we have enabled mouse support, simply use the mouse wheel. And as you can see above here now, tmux now actually jumped into its so-called copy mode, which we can see if we search in the documentation. I think at least it's called copy mode. Yes, so copy mode, yes, there, enter copy mode, which allows you to scroll around in the scrollback buffer and actually select and copy parts out of it into the clipboard, which is something that I use frequently as well. Nevertheless, we can now do that using our mouse wheel. But if we do not want to use it with our mouse wheel, we can actually do it by using a prefix command as well, which by default would be the prefix, so CTRL-A, and then I think it is the open square bracket. Yes, it is the open square bracket. So now we are actually in this mode and we can scroll up and down. We can actually use Ctrl-U to go up and Ctrl-D to go down page-wise, just in the same way as Neovim would do it, keeping your cursor in the middle, which is quite a nice thing. So as you can see, now I can go up quite far, and let's go up and up and up and up and up and up, and then there I am actually at the end of the scrollback buffer. So I have generated more numbers than tmux actually has stored in its memory as an scrollback buffer, because the default of the scrollback buffer, the history limit, so to speak, which by the way is the same for the whole tmux session that you are in. I think it's session wise. So is 2000 lines. So tmux will by default only store 2000 lines. If you are using tmux as kind of a replacement for all the neat little stuff that your terminal has, which I am doing, you need most likely you need or want a bigger scrollback buffer. I essentially have in all my terminals usually enabled unlimited scrollback buffer. That's, by the way, the reason why I have simply the option set here, set option, -G history limit, which by the way defines the maximum size of the history. And in my configurations in lines, as I've mentioned before, I have usually set it to 100,000 lines or even 250,000. So this of course may take a lot of memory. Nevertheless, it's not that much that I need to worry about it. I am actually restarting my sessions recently enough or often enough that I most likely never really reach that. And if I really reach that, there is a good reason why I may want to go back actually to take a look at what was happening before. So yeah, let's save that. And let's quickly see, because I'm not 100% sure if I was right with the 2000 lines, but I think I am. So show options -G history limit. Okay, 2000 lines. Yes, I was right. Okay, so let's set it to 100, 1000. And now let's go back into this session here again. Let's introduce a couple of enter signs here just to see where this break was actually. And then let's do this random generation again. And now let's wait a second and then let's stop it again. Let's go into the scroll mode here and now let's go up. And what is interesting here is that we do not have that much more lines here. Maybe I actually need to, it may be that I need to restart actually a tmux here. Okay, let's quickly try that. Maybe I need to restart tmux here just to get this going again. So I wanted one shell here and another one here. And in this one, I actually wanted the tmux configuration. Let's quickly reopen that. Let's go back here. Here we had the man page of tmux. Let's go here and let's do our while true echo something something. Let's create a couple of numbers. Let's stop that then. And now let's go into this mode. And now, as you can see, we have 99,612 lines. And yeah, I might not want to go up now to the beginning here, as you can imagine. But maybe I could be doing that by pressing GG. Yes, that actually works. So, so the usual or a lot of the different Vim key bindings actually work here. So GG will get you to the beginning, and caps lock G will so caps G. Shift G, a big capital letter G, will get you to the bottom of it, and so on and so on. By the way, you can actually select now something here. So if I press V, I think yes, Shift V, I could, for example, line-wise select something. And if I now press Enter, I would actually have that, as you can see here, by just inserting that, I would have that in my clipboard. So that's the way that I usually do copy and paste in a terminal. I'm using my keyboard and tmux key bindings for that. And of course, you could remap those square bracket open key to just use something different to enter copy mode, which I actually usually do, because I have a specific other configuration for that, and the square bracket open is quite hard to reach on my keyboard. Nevertheless, we now have talked about the history limit and why I actually intend to increase it quite a lot. And I then, by the way, mostly disable the scrollback buffer in my usual terminals. So I'm using Ghosty now. I'm not 100% sure if I have disabled it there. In the West term configuration before that I had, I definitely disabled the scrollback buffer because I simply don't need it, because I'm using tmux for that. Okay, let's talk about another thing, another option that I usually set, which I don't like in its default. And that is actually what the terminal actually shows as a title. And in this case, you just have to believe me what the terminal displays, or what tmux displays, better said, because my terminal, as you can see, doesn't have a title bar, so it doesn't show a title. Nevertheless, there are ANSI escape sequences which allow a terminal, or the application within the terminal, better said, to set the title of the terminal. And usually this title has a specific format. For example, in Neovim, it usually is the file name and something that is currently edited and something like that. tmux will add stuff to that. It will add something like, I think, the session identifier, the current host name, as well as then somewhere in it the original title. And I usually only want it to show me the title of the current active window and pane that I am in. And you can easily do that by setting another option here, which is actually first of all define that we want to override that title. That would be set titles. So we set titles to on, and by the way, we do that globally, of course. And now we can use the set titles string. So let's quickly go into the documentation here and search for set titles string. Okay, so set titles string used to set the client terminal title if set titles is on. Okay, we already did that, so nice. Formats are expanded. That is important. See the formats section. Okay, let's see the formats section. The format section actually tells us, if we scroll down a little, here's this section, that we can actually expand certain specific placeholders within all kinds of different options and strings and definitions in tmux, and we will actually take a further look at that when we begin styling this bar here and making everything look a little bit neater, because then we will need all of this meta information that is printed here somewhere. And nevertheless, we can actually expand certain kind of dynamic variables. And if we scroll down a little, we actually get all different kinds of variable names here that we can actually use. And the one that we actually search for is something like the title. So let's search for that. And there actually is one that is called pane title, and it has a short form as well, which would be #t, or we could use the long form, which is pane title. So let's quickly use that in combination with set titles string, so that we set the option. Come on, option -g, set titles string, and we just set it now. Yeah, let's set it to the long form. So what we could do is we could just do #t here, that would work, or we could do it in the long form, which I already forgot again, so pane title. So let's write pane title here. And now if I actually resource that file, so source.tmux.conf, actually, my terminal title would be the normal one again, the one that is actually set by the application within the current pane that we have. So the active pane will always be the title that we display. And that is actually kind of the default behavior that would be shown if we didn't have tmux at all. And in situations where I actually have a terminal title displayed, I really much like this behavior and not the strange tmuxy one. That's why I'm setting this title like this. And if you are one of the persons that doesn't like the tmux titles as well, you now know how to actually disable that. Okay, let's talk about quickly splitting windows, because we have a slight problem with splitting windows in the default tmux configuration that you might not have seen in my quick demo that I did here. So the problem is the following, and it's not with splitting windows alone, it's with creating windows as well. So let's go, for example, into our experimentation shell here, which is window number 3. Sorry, I'm just about to create number 4. That's why I'm, okay, so let's go, for example, in our Neovim from scratch directory here. Okay, no match. Let's just go there. No, that's not the one that I wanted to go in. So what do we actually have here? We have there Neovim from scratch. Nice. Okay, there it is. Let's quickly clear the shell. Now we are in this directory from our last Neovim series, where we did all of that from scratch configuration for a Neovim setup that actually is quite nicely for all of our development needs. And where we will, by the way, continue having new videos about Neovim in the future, not as part of that series. That series has been completed, but which actually will build upon the basic configuration that we did there and show you a lot of different and other things as well. Nevertheless, we are now within this directory. If I now create with CTRL-A-C a new window, you can see that we are actually now in my home directory here again, and not in the directory that I have been in before. And I know a lot of people like it that way. I do not. If I create a new window or a new pane, by the way, we have the same problem with a pane. So if I, for example, create a split pane here, it will be in my home directory again, because it's just in the base directory of a login shell. And I don't like that. I usually create a new window because I'm, for example, in this Neovim from scratch directory here. I'm opening up Neovim here, and now I decide, oh, okay, I need something else there to, for example, run tests or run a server or something else. Then I simply want to create a new window here, and I want it to be in the same directory as it has been before. And to actually achieve that, we need to switch or change something in our configuration. We need to override a key binding. And as we have already learned in the beginning, the command to open up a new window is new window. So let's search for new window as a command, and let's hope that we can quickly find that. Okay, it's a little bit above, I think. Somewhere here it must be. There it is, new window, the command. Okay. So as you can see now, it actually has a couple of options that we can give it. And one of those is the start directory. So it's actually the directory where this window should start in. I don't know if it's further explained below here. Nevertheless, the documentation naming here of the argument is quite clear. So we wanted to give it the start directory, which is the current directory. So let's get back to our formats that we learned about before, the formats section. You remember all those automatically expanded variables here. And let's maybe search here for path. And by the way, there is something which is called pane current path if available. So it's the current path of the pane that we are in. So if we would use new window with a -c and then followed by this pane current path, it should actually open up a new window at the position, or at the path position where we currently are active at. So let's try that by simply overriding the C binding here with a new command. We are overriding it with new window -c, and we are just putting pane, and I've already forgotten it again, pane current path in there. So if we now have this mapping active, it will override the mapping that we had before for prefix key C, which was just a new window command. So now I can actually save that. I sourced this file, and now let's see what actually happens if I now create a new window from within this window, which is in another directory. I'm pressing CTRL-A and it didn't work. Interesting. Okay, so why didn't that work? Maybe I cannot override that, but I should be able to do that actually. So, but yeah, it's because I put panel current path there. So the path was actually kind of empty, so it didn't know what to do with that, or it was even not expanded, and it was this strange board thing here, this one. And so yeah, let's save that. Let's source again. Let's go back here and let's try that again. CTRL-A. And now, as you can see, we are actually in this directory, which is nice. Nevertheless, if I'm splitting this now, it still is not in the right directory. Of course it's not, because we only overrode the new window command, the prefix C command. So we need to do the same thing for the command to split vertically as well as horizontally. So we need to actually override the wording is on the top. It's on the tip of my tongue. The quotation mark, that's the word that I was searching for. Sorry there. We need to override the quotation mark. So we are simply binding the key to the quotation mark, and we need to kind of quote the quotation mark here. And we are using the split window function here, which, by the way, takes the same entry with -c, which is actually this this pane current path here. So let's do that like that, pane, and I was typing panel again, pane current path like that. And what we need again as well is, of course, the %sign, because the %sign is the splitting which is horizontal. So we need to specify that with a -h here actually in split window to tell it to split horizontally, because the vertical split is the default and the horizontal has to be specified specifically. And in this case, we can just leave out this single quotation mark characters there. And now if I've done that correctly, and I don't know, the coloring here seems to tell me that I might not have done that correctly, but let's see, maybe just the syntax highlighting is broken. So I can source that file. That might be a good thing there. And if I now split it here horizontally, no, vertically, it's working fine, nice. And if I now split that one up horizontally as well, it's working as well. We are actually now in the current and nice directory there. And that's actually how I like it to use it there, because every other configuration out there going back to the base directory there. If you are fine with that, just do not do this redefines. If you want it like I am wanting it, which is a thing that I'm configuring for each terminal emulator that I was in before I use tmux for new tabs and stuff like that, to always start at my current directory. If you are usually doing that as well, this is the configuration for you. Okay, so we have already fixed most all of the things that I find quite annoying with the default and startup tmux configuration. So we already have a really usable tmux configuration now, but there are some things which make tmux better in certain situations that I want to tell you as well, and that I usually have within my tmux configuration. And one of those is actually to allow focus events. So if we are going into our Manpage here again and taking a look at focus event or focus event, maybe it's just up there. Yes, it's up there. Focus events. When enabled, focus events are requested from the terminal if supported and passed through to the applications running in tmux. Attached clients should be detached and attached again after changing this option. Okay, so this is actually a specific option because it's a server option that we will talk about in a second what that means. But what it does is actually in terminals, you can actually, in addition to something like, for example, mouse information, like mouse escape codes that we already talked about here, you can actually receive other specific escape and meta information there as well, which allows us to see, for example, if the terminal currently is in focus or the window is not in focus and stuff like that. And there are certain shell applications that actually work with that information. And by default, certain escape sequences need to be sent to the terminal to enable the capturing of those informations and those or to enable this data stream, so to speak, to the application. tmux by default does not do that. But if you enable focus events, it will actually go ahead and talk to the terminal to actually get those events, and then it passes them down to the applications that are running within tmux. And that allows certain applications that are using and accepting those focus events to actually work with that. So I usually have that enabled because I never had a problem with it. If you encounter any problem with this specifically, just disable it and it's okay. So let's enable that quickly, and then I will talk about server options here. So because we need to do something specific here, we have set option -S now, and not -G for global, but S for server. And we now need to enable focus events. And we need to set it to on. Yes. Okay. So we enable focus events. But what's with this server options? So if we scroll up this list here, we can see that this list actually this list actually is beyond the following title, which tells us, okay, there are certain server options. In order to actually have this session management and the possibility to detach from a running session, so as we have learned, I can detach from this one, and now I can reattach, there has to be some process in your system which is running, where all of those processes here that are running inside of this are kind of forked from. So it needs to be the parent process. And if we detach, our tmux process goes away. So where the hell are all those processes hanging now in our process tree? And where are they managed? Because they need to be managed somewhere to reattach later on. That's why tmux actually uses client-server principles. So what you actually have is, once you run tmux first, it will start a tmux server. So kind of a daemon in the background. A process which is forked into the background, that's just running there now, that's managing all of your tmux windows and panes and sessions and stuff like that. And then a tmux session or a tmux client is spawned that is actually then attached via a specific protocol to the server, and that is what we are seeing here in our shell. That's the client then that is talking to the server. And certain options need to be set on the server side because they are quite relevant to the server process of it all. And those are server options. And some of those are, for example, something like the where is it? Focus events, or we will have extended keys in a second that we will set. And something like, for example, the escape time as well. And those are properties actually that we will set now. But those are specific configuration options which only will restart, by the way, if you restart the tmux server. So essentially by closing up all sessions and then restarting it so that it will actually restart the server as well. So we need to actually set those options which are marked in this list here using the -s flag with set option to set them as a server option. Okay, so we now have focus events, and before we restart the server actually, I told you I want to set something else because there are two other server options that make your life most likely a little bit easier and tmux a little bit more compatible with a lot of or nearly all CLI applications there. And that would be, as I've already stated, extended keys, which actually allows, wait a second, no, set option -s extended keys on, which actually allow tmux and the running application within tmux to use and register and talk about a specific set of further key combinations and escape sequences to be used, which some, not very many, but some applications, like for example Neovim, use at certain situations. So extended keys actually allows you to bind nearly all of the keys that you could bind in Neovim in a normal shell, in tmux as well. Otherwise, there are certain very strange key combinations that might not be bindable. I don't think I'm using one of those, so I don't have the problem, but it's not a bad thing to enable that. And if you have any problems at all, then disable that. But by default, it's always enabled in my tmux config, and I actually never had a real problem there. There is another option there that I quickly want to talk about, which is escape time, I think it's called. Yes, escape time. And escape time actually sets the time in milliseconds for which tmux waits after an escape is input to determine if it's part of a function or a meta key sequence. So essentially you can use the escape key to call up certain actions there that I am usually not using. So as I'm not using that, nevertheless, tmux will have this delay time, this waiting time. And as I'm using Neovim for all of my development, you could have guessed if you have seen my Neovim from scratch series or other videos on this channel here, I actually got sometimes the problem that this waiting time is kind of annoying because I'm always and all of the time pressing escape to get back into normal mode, for example, from insert mode and stuff like that. So I usually just set this time to 0, and I do not have any problems with that because I'm not using this escape functionality. So my default option here would be to set where is it? Set option and -s and then escape time 0. And having that set now, this is the last of the triple of server options that I am actually usually setting in order to make my tmux life a little bit easier. And with that, I can now save that, go out of all of my shells here, see that I have not another session there running. Perfect, there is none running, so I start it again. And now actually my config is sourced and everything is like I like it to use tmux. So this is actually my basic tmux configuration, and it's just 23 lines long. And this base configuration makes tmux for myself already so much more usable than it is in its default way of doing things that I really much love all of those options. Those are essentially the combined knowledge and searching for change, for the possibility to change things that I found annoying with tmux when I started using it. So you don't have to do that actually anymore, because you now have all of those at one position together to simply kind of use those for your or to your likings and to start using tmux. So that is actually where I want to end this session here, because now we have a proper tmux session. and we can actually do a lot of nice stuff with it. We can already use it. You could already use it to play around a little, get familiar with windows, with panes, with sessions, with all of that stuff. And yeah, it doesn't look nice. So that is actually what we will talking about in part 2 of this video. We will talk about how we can style this, how we can actually create our own theme there that looks nice, how we can change the information that is actually part of this status bar, how we can, if you would like to move the status bar, for example, to the top, and a couple of other things like how we can then integrate Neovim with tmux to actually use the same key bindings for Neovim splits and tmux panes to transparently and seamlessly navigate between the different panes and Neovim splits without changing key combinations, which actually is quite a nice feature. So I hope you had fun seeing me basically configure tmux and showing you the basic usage of tmux. And I hope that you now have a tmux configuration and maybe it's not that intimidating anymore as it may have been before we started this session. And I hope, of course, you give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, and to subscribe to know when the next one is out actually, where I will show you all of that theming stuff as well as that Neovim integration. Yeah, and if you have any further questions or information or comments on this video, please use the comment function of YouTube. YouTube algorithm always likes that as well. So yeah, I hope you will tell me what you think of this video, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye!